Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. The first guest of the night is a senior NHL writer at Sideline Sports Resort to talk about the NHL and NBA off seasons and some second half baseball storylines. Steve Liberman, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Madison. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. Best move of the offseason. I almost said signing, but we're going to do all moves, including trades. What do you think was the best move of the offseason?
Um, well, uh, I'm going to give major props to your Rangers and signing Artemi Panarin. Obviously, they came in sort of at the last minute and sort of we're able to get that done. And obviously trading Jimmy Vesey. When that deal happened, you kind of knew that that was specifically for Artemi Panarin. But there's a lot of there's a lot of good moves in terms of I like Nashville signing of Matt Duchene. I think that was an interest that obviously dates back to before, like when Matt Duchene was traded to Ottawa. Nashville had a lot of interest in making a deal with Colorado, and that never really got materialized. But now Nashville has Matt Duchene, and they have Kyle Turris too. So now assuming they don't trade Turris, so. I like that move. I like the Bobrovsky to Florida. They finally get a good, franchise goaltender. So far you just got to give props to the Rangers and getting Artemi Panarin, nabbing the big fish like they pretty much can. That's pretty much my, best move of the off season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I had Panarin penciled in as the best move of the offseason, too. I know a lot of people listening to this will probably be like, oh, you're a Homer, you're a Rangers fan, but nope. I'm not that biased on my podcast. So my best move I have penciled in as Artemi Panarin. My worst move of the offseason was Arizona trading for Phil Kessel. To me, that didn't make much sense. What's your pick for the worst move of the offseason?
Well, look, I wouldn't characterize it as a terrible move. I mean, Phil Castle does have that relationship with Rick Tocchet, so I think that's why that move only got done. I don't like the fact that they had to give up, Galchenyuk just because he's a younger talent. I wish they probably gave up someone maybe like Michael Grabner, which him and Kessel come from the same draft. Maybe that if that was the case, then I think that maybe makes sense because I think Grabner would fit very nicely with Pittsburgh. He still has some good speed that I think he can offer them, and he's a winger. So I think that that's where that move doesn't make sense because now they got a good young asset in Galchenyuk, and Pittsburgh. I think he's going to learn under Evgeny Malkin, which I think is going to be crucial. So. I would say that was I wouldn't call it a bad move. It's not a great move. But just doesn't really make much sense. From a Arizona perspective for a team that really just hasn't made the playoffs, and it's trying to also, I would think they would try to get younger. So, that move doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's not a totally bad move on both teams. But Phil Kessel's obviously, he's going down there. He's on the decline of his career. So it's a little bit perplexing, but again, we'll see what happens. But I'm not going to really bash this move on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I just didn't like it from Arizona's perspective because, like you said, Kessel's a declining player. I think he would have fit somewhere else like a San Jose or even the Predators I thought would have been a better fit, or even the Vegas Golden Knights. I feel like he'd fit better on a team that's currently in contention, not a team that is mediocre like the Coyotes. Which team do you think had the best offseason?
Um, I think again, I'm going to give credit to my team, the New Jersey Devils. I think they've had a great off season so far. But still, obviously, the big question remains Taylor Hall and what's going to happen with that situation. And I think if they're able to get him locked up this summer in an extension, then I think they really won the off season. But I think drafting Hughes number one overall, and then trading for PK Subban. I like the Wayne Simmons signing. It's only a 1-year deal. Now, he gets experience, the Devils Flyers rivalry from a New Jersey angle. So, but it's only a 1-year deal. There's never an issue with those kind of contracts. Shiro, wants to be a smart cap manager. So, there's that. Colorado, I like the offseason they've sort of had, getting Nazem Kadri, making the draft picks that they made, Bowen Byram, and then, I think his name Alex Newhook or something.
Yes.
I like the draft picks they made, and the Kale Rosen, the prospect they got from Toronto, the Tyson Barrie deal. I like that, and obviously, they have the young forwards, and McKinnon. They obviously are getting some secondary scoring in Kadri, and that's the main thing for Colorado. It's just I like. Montreal, I'm defending Bergevin on that offer sheet he submitted. I give him a lot of credit for being aggressive, but, again, I think, Carolina's, obviously going to match the offer to Aho. I think the Islanders have had, a pretty good offseason, I'd say, because, they were going to keep Anders Lee in the fold. There's a lot of teams that I think that are, there's certain teams that I think the power is sort of going away. And a lot of teams that, haven't really made the playoffs are going back on the rise. So, obviously, Florida, obviously fans wish they probably would have landed both of Bobrovsky and Panarin. But, I think they've had a very good offseason, getting Brett Connolly in there, getting Anton Strawman, getting, Bobrovsky, obviously, and, amongst other players. So, I think Vancouver's had a pretty good offseason, getting Tyler Myers, getting Jordy Ben. And now getting Michael Furlan. So, there's those teams sort of had a great off seasons as well, including the Rangers as well.
Yeah, my pick for this was Colorado, because I just really liked that they expanded an asset in Tyson Barrie with their defense getting younger and improving. They needed secondary scoring, so they get Kadri in there. I think that's among the Cup favorites for next year. I really love what they did. You mentioned the Devils. I think that's my honorable mention for best off season, because I think that the Wayne Simmons 1-year deal was very wise, and I still think that PK Subban has something left in the tank. So I like what New Jersey did. We talked about the Rangers already with Panarin, but Colorado, I really enjoyed what they did, and they just gave their coach a deserving contract extension as well. Islanders, I think they did some good things too. Bringing back Anders Lee, which I thought they had to do, especially after losing out on Panarin. Florida, it's okay that they didn't get Panarin, in my opinion. To me, the goaltending was more important with Bobrovsky. So, yeah, there's a lot of choices for this, but I'm going to take Colorado. And you mentioned Taylor Hall before with the Devils. Colorado needs to take care of Mikko Rantanen, because I believe he needs to get paid as well. How about the worst offseason by a team?
I think, to be fair, and again, I don't think, I still think they're a very good team, but I think the Boston Bruins, I think they lose Marcus Johansson, who I thought, and again, I think Buffalo, I would think, is having a very good offseason as well. They got Jimmy Vesey, and, now they get Marcus Johansson as well. And they made some trades to, improve their blue line, and getting Colin Miller and Henry Yukahari from Chicago. And I would include Chicago in that fairly good offseason as well. But bad offseason, I'd say the Boston Bruins. I mean, they lost, they've lost, I think, some identity players. Marcus Johansson obviously had a very good playoff. Yeah, obviously, his health is a question mark, but, I would have probably brought him back on another 1 or 2 year deal to Boston, and continue to build the chemistry he was able to develop with Danton Heinen and Charlie Coyle on that line. I mean, that line was probably the best line on the ice for the most part. In the latter part of the playoffs, I know they lost to the Blues in the final, but I mean, that's really, I think, to me, a terrible, not a great offseason. And then they lost Noel Acciari to Florida, so. I think Acciari was a great fourth liner. I mean, with Corrali and Wagner on that fourth line. I mean, that was was one of the better fourth lines in the playoffs. So I'd say Boston probably had a fairly bad offseason.
Yeah, I almost picked the Bruins for that, actually, because they didn't really do anything of significance. Although they were just in the final, so I decided to give them a bit of a free pass. My pick for this is the Edmonton Oilers. To me, they had to make some improvements on their blue line. I really don't think they've done that. And it's just same old Oilers, like overpaying some guys that really aren't worth what they got. And to me, that team's just under pressure to win now. Like, you have Connor McDavid on your team, for crying out loud. And Leon Draisaitl, who is a great Robin to McDavid's backman.
I'm going to probably give the Oilers a small pass this year. I mean, Kenny Holland obviously is coming in. It's his first year on the job. So I think he's probably going to try to evaluate probably the season for them. And, look, I mean, they should, again, I think Peter Chiarelli kind of left them in a little bit of a salary cap fiddle, or, should you say. So I think, they haven't really made major improvements, but I think the Oilers are definitely, going to be in a wait and see kind of mode this year. And I give it. Look, I like the coaching staff. I think Dave Tippett is an outstanding coach. I think he's going to get the most out of a lot of those players, and I think he's going to get a lot of players to overachieve. Yes, they do have goaltending, is a question mark, but I think Mike Smith can definitely handle the load for a year or two there. So that's kind of where I stand with Edmonton. I think, they didn't really add any players, but again, I like the coaching staff, and my confidence in them rests with Dave Tippett. I think he's a great coach. I think he's going to get the most out of McDavid, the most out of Draisaitl, and I think if he can work a miracle with Jesse Puljujarvi, assuming Puljujarvi starts with Edmonton, then I think the Oilers could definitely be a bubble playoff team.
Yeah, we'll see about that. To me, the goaltending isn't good enough. I don't believe in Mike Smith at all. You mentioned an interesting candidate there for the next big name traded, which was my next question to you. Who do you think would be the next big name traded with Kessel already on the move and Subban? Who do you think has the chance to be moved this summer before the season?
Well, an interesting name to watch. I would say, maybe if the LA Kings can somehow trade Jeff Carter's contract, that's that could be a big name to watch. Obviously I did mention Taylor Hall, and I keep writing it on Twitter a lot that I'm of the notion that they should try to trade him if they don't sign him to an extension before training camp, just because you don't want to go into the season under that cloud of whether look, is he going to sign or is he not going to sign? It's just it's going to be a lot of pressure on the team to perform well. Certain players might not really respond to that pressure very well, but we could see Taylor Hall traded. Maybe Chris Kreider on the Rangers if he's if the Rangers want to kind of clear a little bit more cap space up to make a run next summer at another big free agent. So again, that's kind of where I see the trade market headed. Florida, maybe they have a name like a Mike Hoffman that they can move. So again, and that's really why that's kind of my notion of where Kyle Turris is another name I would say to get traded. So that's kind of the direction I would look at.
Yeah, I was thinking the name you mentioned as we were talking about the Oilers, Jesse Puljujarvi. That guy really hasn't lived up to expectations. You made the case for them keeping him, which is interesting with the new coaching staff there. That would have been my pick if you didn't kind of just talk me out of that with the new coaching staff there. So this is going to be an interesting or whatever type of call here. I'm thinking it could very well be Mike Hoffman. Like, I could see that. You've talked me into that one because Florida is a team that tends to make deals, and Mike Hoffman's just a guy that bounces around a lot. So I'm going to go with Mike Hoffman as my next big name traded. So let's switch over to the NBA and pretty much do the same thing we did here with the exception of next big name traded not being Russell Westbrook. We'll get to Russell Westbrook and his next destination in a little bit. How about the best signing of the NBA offseason, or best move, I should say?
Best move, and look, you got to go with Kawhi to the Clippers. I mean, and just because of the way it was done, I might not like the contract structure too much, but I think just the way it was done, The LA, you had that earthquake in LA, and then in the middle of the earthquake, it seems like Kawhi and Paul George and, making their decisions there. I think, it's simple. I think Kawhi to the Clippers is probably the best signing.
I agree with you there. That's what I had penciled down as my best move, too, with an honorable mention to the Paul George trade. I just think that they gave up too much, but that's okay. You have to give up that much if you want to get a superstar like Paul George. The worst move of the offseason, I think we're in agreement here because we were talking about this on Twitter, killing this particular team for signing this particular player.
It's got to be the Phoenix Suns. I mean, that's the moves they're making are just very questionable. And I personally think Monty Williams should probably quit as the head coach there, just because he's being set up for failure. And when I saw Ricky Rubio sign, I'm like, does he still play basketball? I mean, that's kind of nothing makes sense in Phoenix. I mean, nothing has really made sense since they had those good years under with Steve Nash being there. So. I feel bad for Monty Williams. That's all pretty much you got to say about the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, I had Rubio to the Suns as my worst move, too. Yes, the Suns needed a point guard, but I would have gone younger and tried to trade for somebody that needed a change of scenery or signed somebody young. Like, even D'Angelo Russell would have made sense for them. Like, he's young. He would have helped that team a lot. But Ricky Rubio, come on. What are you doing, Suns? And the best offseason team-wise, I think we're in agreement here, too. What's your team for the best offseason?
And this is like, I think Brooklyn's having a great offseason. And, that's, obviously the Clippers, the Lakers, even though they have that sort of circus, I mean, them getting Anthony Davis. So that's huge. So I would say those three teams are, the best offseason. I would probably include Boston as well. Getting Kemba Walker, I think that was a huge move. So, and I'm not going to kill the Raptors as well. Even though they lost Kawhi, I still think they're going to be a very good team.
My pick for best offseason's the Clippers. If you get Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, you win. The Paul George trade, I think, sealed it for them. Brooklyn would have been my choice if Kevin Durant did not tear his Achilles, so that injury swings it to the Clippers. But in everyone's defense, no one knew that this Paul George thing was going to happen. This happened so under the radar, such a big surprise. I was actually sleeping when the move got made. My phone was vibrating. It woke me up. I was freaking out. I put on the ESPN app and was up another 2 hours. And I was saying to myself, what the hell just happened? And it was just insane. And I'm really happy for the Clippers because they
I did wake up too a little bit in the middle of the night, but just check my phone and then just turned Twitter on accidentally and just saw the Wojquake, as they called it, because of the earthquake.
Yeah, the Wojquake. That's a clever name for that. How about the team that's had the worst offseason? I think you know my answer to this. I don't know if you agree with me or not. I think you do.
Well, I mean, obviously, let's keep the Suns out of it. I mean, the Knicks, just because, they weren't able to land pretty much the big names. And then obviously, the Thunder, they just by trading Paul George, and now they're going to have to get rid of Russell Westbrook. But again, I think, but I'm going to also go with the Rockets. I mean, let's not forget the Rockets. I mean, they obviously have big plans, and they wanted to get Jimmy Butler in there, but now they don't. And Chris Paul and James Harden, obviously they're talking, but I still don't think it's going to work out in the end for them. And obviously the Miami Heat, I still also think have had sort of a pretty rough offseason. I don't get the fit with Jimmy Butler over there.
The Houston Rockets is a very good selection. I thought you were going to say the Knicks as your answer, but the Rockets is a good one. They were all in, we thought, for Jimmy Butler. Then he goes to Miami instead, and they're stuck with the same team that they've had. But in their defense, the Warriors aren't the same anymore, but at the same time, the Clippers and the Lakers are better. The Jazz and the Blazers are better, and so are the Nuggets. and you really just sat on your ass and did nothing. That's a good one, but mine is the Knicks. The failure to land Kevin Durant, to me, you're the loser of the offseason. But I know a lot of people are going to say to me in defense, he's injured. They're right. He is injured. It would have been worse if he wasn't hurt, I'll be honest. I think that the moves the Knicks made, I don't really mind some of them, but I think they should have taken on bad contracts and took picks, a la Brooklyn a few years ago when they took on the Allen Crabbe contract and they took on Mozgov's contract and landed Russell. I thought that was what the Knicks should have done, and that's what I thought there was a chance that they were going to do. Because when I was starting to hear that Durant to Brooklyn was realistic, I said, I think the Knicks are actually going to trade for players that are on bad contracts and get picks and assets out of it, but they didn't do that. They went and signed Julius Randle, who I think is a good player. He just got massively overpaid, in my opinion. And then all those guys, the 1 and 2 year deals, they're going to land Marcus Morris. It looks like he's a good player. I think that's the guy that they're going to end up trading at the deadline next year if they sign him, and they can get potentially a first-round pick from. I like Marcus Morris. He's a very good player. And some of those guys they got, I think, are going to help the young kids like Taj Gibson. I think he's washed, but I think he's somebody that could be a mentor to somebody like Mitchell Robinson or somebody like that. So I still think the Knicks had the worst offseason. Maybe that's just me as a bitter Knicks fan. We talked about Russell Westbrook and the Thunder. Where do you think Russ lands?
I'm going to say either Miami or Minnesota. I mean, that's where, and I'll leave it at that.
Miami, I could totally see happening. I almost wrote them in. I feel like that's become too popular. Sometimes the too popular doesn't always happen. As we saw Jimmy Butler initially, we thought Minnesota was going to trade him to Miami, and then they ended up trading him to Philly. My pick for Russ, the Detroit Pistons. They're a team that I think wants a second star with Blake Griffin, and I can see them stupidly packaging Reggie Jackson's expiring, which is a bad contract, with like Luke Kennard, Bruce Brown, a couple other young guys, and some picks, and they're just going to try to hang around in the Eastern Conference with Russ and Blake Griffin, which would be a weird fit in my opinion. How about the next big name traded not named Russell Westbrook?
It's kind of a tough one, and if I had to venture a guess, and I would have allowed Ben Simmons in Philly. That's kind of something to watch out there.
That's not a bad choice, because I know they've been talking about an extension. There are some reports about that, and if things go bad and the extension talks go south, don't rule that out. That's not a bad answer. I'm going to say Chris Paul. I don't know. Either Chris Paul or Clint Capella. I'm going to say, actually, Capella. I think they move him and try to gauge assets to potentially go out and get perhaps a Russell Westbrook. And maybe Chris Paul's involved in the Westbrook trade. So I'm going to say that Chris Paul is involved in the Westbrook trade, and he goes to a third team, not Oklahoma City. And before that move, I'm going to say that the Rockets trade Clint Capella to a team that has cap space and can take on his contract. That's not bad like the Knicks, but I'm saying like a team that's trying to get better. Maybe somebody like... I thought that the Celtics would be in play for Capella, but they went out and signed Dennis Kanter, so maybe not them. But I could see them flipping Capella somewhere and then flipping Chris Paul to another trade or another team, and then them ultimately getting Russell Westbrook. And then Russ and Harden would be a weird fit. But I'm not calling Russ to Houston, but I'm just going to say that Capella gets dealt thinking that Daryl Morey thinks that he's going to get Westbrook, and ultimately he doesn't. Because we've seen Daryl Morey trade stars in hopes of getting other stars, and that's failed before. As we saw, as he tried to get Carmelo Anthony and failed, among other superstars. And let's switch over to baseball real quick. Second half starts tonight. We have the Rangers and the Astros. Who do you think wins each division?
say the Astros win the West. I like the Twins in the Central. I think it looks good for the Yankees right now, and then the Indians and I'm gonna go with the Indians and the Rays for the wild card.
Wow, so no Red Sox. All right, I agree with you with the division winners. And the wild cards, I think Boston will host Tampa. I think that the Red Sox go on a run. They're still the reigning world champions. I think they make a move at the deadline. I think the Rays will be a buyer and try to get some big names and potentially land some big names. To me, I have the Indians out because I think that they trade Trevor Bauer. So that's why I'm not picking the Indians. And a lot of people picking the Indians are picking them because they think they're going to keep Trevor Bauer. I do not. I think somebody will overpay for them. It could very well be the New York Yankees or the Houston Astros. And how about the National League?
Well, I think the Dodgers win the West. I think the Braves win the East. I think the Brewers win the Central. And I'm going to go with the Cubs. And
National League's tough. A lot of good teams.
Yeah, I think the Cubs host the wild card. That's what I'll have.
Cubs against who?
Let's see. I would say the Cubs. South St. Louis is doing good.
Who, the Cardinals?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not a bad choice. I think I could see them going on a second half run. I've always had a soft spot for the Cardinals and a lot of respect. Oh, breaking news from Shams. Marcus Morris plans to sign a 1-year, $15 million contract with the New York Knickerbockers. So there you go. So back to the predictions real quick. First time I had a guest on breaking news on the podcast, so that was pretty cool. National League picks. I'm going to agree with you with the Braves and the Dodgers winning their respective divisions. But I'm going to go with the Cubs in the Central. I think they add an arm at the deadline, whether that's a reliever or a starter. I think that offense will bounce back a little bit after its little slide, which seen their division lead swindle. So I think the Cubs win the Central. And the wild cards, I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Brewers and the Colorado Rockies. I think that the Brewers finally get a pitcher, and Christian Yelich single-handedly carries them to the postseason. And I think Nolan Arenado has a big second half to lead the Rockies. So the same playoff teams from a year ago I have back in. Honorable mentions to Washington and Philadelphia. I think both those teams will be buyers, but ultimately I think Christian Yelich and Nolan Arenado will single-handedly carry their teams to the playoffs. And I think that the Rockies can make a move for a starter as well. One last thing before we go. Bold prediction of the second half of the season for baseball.
I'm going to say just the Dodgers over the Astros in the World Series.
Not bad. That's not a bad one. I think that that's really realistic. Mine, I'm going to say that we just talked about the National League. For the second year in a row, we'll have a Game 163, and I think it'll be the Rockies hosting Max Scherzer and the Washington Nationals, and the Nationals lose at Coors Field. That's my prediction.
All right, that sounds very good.
All right, thanks for coming on, and we'll have you on maybe before the football season when we'll do some football predictions and whatnot.
Okay, thank you for having me, Madison.